We'll call the Honourable Nikki Kay.
Mr Speaker, look, it's a privilege to be back in this House. I think the election was a referendum on the general direction of this government, and what we saw was nearly 50% of New Zealanders backing the direction of this government. The speech that we just heard is actually part of the reason why. We have a Prime Minister that our caucus backs, we've got a united caucus, we've got 14 new talented members. This side of the House has itself in order. The other side of the House are focused on ideological battles. What I heard when I was door knocking in Auckland Central, and I'm very pleased to be the member for the third time, over 9,500 doors. A number of things people said to me. Firstly, they acknowledged the work that we had done in terms of the economy. We came back from the largest hit to GDP of any developed nation in the world to have some outstanding economic figures, and we have to acknowledge our economic team, in particular the Honourable Bill English, who has done an outstanding job in terms of the New Zealand economy. Some of the figures. 3.9% the economy grew in the year 30 to June. Average wages are up by $2,500 in the last 2 years. The figures are outstanding given what we've been through. As Minister of Civil Defence, I'm personally very aware of the situation in Canterbury. The level of destruction, and from an economic and social perspective, what our government has invested is huge. And so it is significant to acknowledge the general economic direction that we are currently under. But I want to talk today about some of my priorities as Minister. In particular, I want to focus on my associate education role. I want to acknowledge as well the Honourable Hekia Parata, who's in the House today, the outstanding job that she's doing as Minister. Because what we constantly hear from the other side is that this side doesn't have a heart. And why I believe we nearly commanded 50% of the vote of New Zealanders is because that is just blatant claptrap. If you look at the results and what we have done for our most disadvantaged, 100,000 houses insulated, more money in terms of rheumatic fever, more young people in early childhood education, more young Māori and Pacific students in early childhood education, NCEA level results up, NCEA level results up for Māori and Pacific students. What the other side will tell you is that we don't care. Well, the reason that we have people voting from many diverse communities over the country, the reason we have members of Parliament in this House, on this side of the House, that came from pretty disadvantaged backgrounds is because they believe in our policies. They actually believe that it is wrong not to know where those children are that aren't achieving. That's why we have national standards. They actually believe in a policy, and as Associate Minister of Education, I'm very proud that we've invested more than $700 million to enable young people to have access to fast, reliable, uncapped, funded connections by the government, because at the heart of that policy is equity. I was really pleased to be in Te Araha to have the 1,000th connection for Network for Learning. I acknowledge the local MP, Scott Simpson. And what we can see that is happening in these schools is not just about today, it is actually about investing in New Zealand for a long period of time. Some of these children, they're involved in robotics, they even had a television and radio station. What we are offering as part of our government's investment is a real investment for the future. That includes not just ultra-fast broadband, it's also our SNUP program, it's also an investment in the managed network, but it's also an investment in wireless. We also fund laptops for teachers, we fund professional development in this area, and that is a significant achievement of this government, and it shows our priority to those issues of equity, and I'm very proud to be the Associate Minister working alongside the Honourable Hekia Parata to deliver for some of our most disadvantaged students. As Minister of ACC, again, what it's about is results. When I was on the doorstep, people were really clear. They could see real policies from national, but also real results compared to some of the ideological battles that are still being fought in the Labour Party. We were handed a very difficult situation in terms of ACC. At a fiscal level, I was very proud to announce in the last week as well that the surplus is at $2.1 billion, that's $300 million more than was expected. What we have committed to as a government is that there will be $480 million in levy reductions going back to households and families in New Zealand. And the reason that we have been able to been able to do that is we've taken some very hard decisions and we've ensured that there is fiscal responsibility here. I do want to acknowledge that there is a long way to go in terms of the corporation. It is an organisation in transition and they have a number of plans to deal with the issues in terms of privacy, but also, as long as I am Minister, I will be focused on ensuring that we treat some of our most disadvantaged and vulnerable better through the system, whether it's through working on that claims process or whether it's through some of the issues in terms of entitlement. But at a fiscal level, the corporation and the government can be very proud of where we have taken that organisation in the last few years. As Minister of Civil Defence, as I said before, we have been incredibly focused on ensuring that we are better prepared as a nation for an event like Canterbury. What does that mean? It means ensuring that we're better equipping our local authorities to deal with some of the smaller events that occur. As Minister of Civil Defence in the last term, I was there up in Northland helping out with the Northland floods, but also we had the Wellington earthquakes. So we are the shaky isles. We have many threats to this nation, and I think it is pleasing that we are doing things around young people, getting them involved in emergency services. We are reviewing our CDEM plan. We have shifted the Ministry of Civil Defence and Emergency Management into the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. That is a really important move because it is saying that not only can we ensure that all of government is better prepared, but also we have a greater focus and a greater sense of preparedness at the highest levels in terms of New Zealand. I do also want to acknowledge that in the area of civil defence, we are seen as world leading. And I'm very proud that Minister McCulley and I signed a new partnership agreement. That's about helping some of our Pacific neighbours. We've been helping countries like Samoa with their siren warning systems. And I want to acknowledge at this point the Honourable Murray McCulley because I think it is an extraordinary achievement. We know that members like David Shearer have been involved in that Security Council campaign, but it is a huge achievement for a small nation to win that seat at the table. And I think in part it is because we have programs in areas like civil defence where we play our part. We are there on the ground actually helping deliver real systems that may one day save lives in countries like Samoa. I'm also Minister of Youth. And I do say to people, and I'm sure I would fight with many of my ministerial colleagues, I do believe I have one of the greatest jobs in New Zealand. I get paid to go and meet a whole lot of amazing young New Zealanders. I often say you won't always see many of their stories, some of the young people that are doing amazing things on the front page of the paper. But I can tell you that we have young people in New Zealand who, whether it's through our school system, they're developing new apps around processing blood quicker, they're developing things for conservation, they're doing some extraordinary things in New Zealand, and in part it's because of the investment that we make in areas like ICT, it's because of the amazing teachers that we have in our classroom. But there is still more to do, and one of the areas that I'm very passionate about is the Prime Minister's Youth Mental Health Project. I think it is significant that our Prime Minister has chosen to lead that area. We still do have too many young people die and take their own lives, and part of that is about issues like bullying. Part of that is about mental health issues, and there are a number of initiatives and over $60 million that are being invested in that Prime Minister's Youth Mental Health Project, and that's a really important project. I do want to put on record that as Minister of Youth Affairs, I am looking at some new priorities. One of them is around the prevention of sexual violence. In particular, in my ACC portfolio, I can see there's a huge amount to do in that area. But I also think there's a huge amount more that we can do in terms of young people with disabilities, and I look forward to working on those areas. Mr. Speaker, it's a privilege to be in this caucus. It's a privilege to be the member of Auckland Central and a member of John Key's cabinet. I do think this is the best that I've seen our party. We have a leader, we have a united caucus, but we also have a number of really, really good policies, and I want to leave you with a couple of them that are pretty dear to my heart. I want to acknowledge the Honourable Hekia Parata. One of the policies that we have campaigned on, but that really hasn't got a lot of media attention, but is very important to me personally, but also in my capacity as Associate Minister of Education, is the 800,000 hours that we have committed to help some of our students in special education. My little sister has severe autism, and I have met with many parents across New Zealand, and I know that's an area where we want to do more, and I think the fact that the Honourable Hekia Parata secured that as part of our election policy is a tribute to her and her leadership, but it's also going to be very important to help some of those students who need further support. So thank you very much.
The Honourable Member Jan Logie.